In this video, we're going to be talking about how to deploy your app. We're going to go through the different options, how to deploy your app, and the documentation and how you can do this step by step. So let's begin with what can you do? How can you deploy your app? Well, if we look at the pricing page of FlutterFlow, it really depends on where we're starting. For example, if we're under the free plan right here, we can do web publishing. And we mentioned this at the beginning. We've done it a couple times throughout the videos, but if I'm going to just have a web publishing, I can do this for free. And we can go from there. If we're at $30 a month standard, we can have a custom domain web publishing. So what does that mean? If I have a certain domain, I want to have it branded under my name, my brand of a domain that I bought, either on like Squarespace or GoDaddy, I can do that. Now, those are the two options for free and standard. If you go pro, you can do a one-click deployment to Apple and Google App Store. Okay, so if you want to have it on the App Store, you can do that and then go from there. Also, too, I would mention for the standard plan, which is really good, you can also download the code if you want to. So if you want to deploy, some people want to put it on the App Store and they deploy it and they're like, I just want to just own my own code and go from there. You can. We'll talk about pros and cons in a later video about that, but you certainly can. That won't be an issue at all after you deploy it. Now, I will say it's a little deceiving where it says one-click deployment to Apple and Google App Store because you got to do a lot of work beforehand. But yes, they do make it very streamlined, but there are things to consider, and we're going to go through the common errors that people have. Okay, so we have discussed it. You could have web publishing for free. You can have a custom custom domain and have web publishing at $30 or at $70. You can do the deployment to Apple and Google app stores. Okay, so we have that. How would you physically do this? All right, so if we go into our project, you'll start here in the build section. We're going to go and drop down to the cog, which will be the settings. From there, we're going to go under app settings, and we can see mobile deployment, and then we can see web publishing. So here for web publishing, we have to go through the site URL, make sure we have it, SEO title, so search optimization. You want to make sure it has a good title that represents or allows people to understand what your site is going to be about. You have all of these different details you fill in. You can decide if you're going to enable having a PWA, which is a progressive web app. So if checked, this website can be installed as a progressive web app. You will use your launcher icon in app assets settings. So say, for instance, if someone's going to save it onto their mobile device or something like that and have it as a PWA, you can do that. You can allow showcasing. What does that mean? It says, if checked, FlutterFlow may feature your project in its updates, emails, and on its website. That's nice. It says, allow search engine indexing. If unchecked, add no index tag that prevents search engines from indexing your site. So this really, if you want it to be found, you should index it, right? This should be really important because then you can have a better presence online, and there's a higher chance for people to find it. And then individual page titles. So if you have different titles displayed in browser tabs for all of your pages for your web app. Set these in the route settings of each page. That will again help with indexing and just organization for people to understand your site and when they're searching and things like that. You'll be able to have your a social share image. You can have custom headers, and then you can add a custom domain as well. So when we're publishing, we can go through this process and publish. And also what I always love, you could have more documentation to understand about web publishing. Okay, so that is web publishing. I would actually encourage this even before you decide to, if you decide to deploy it to the App Store, do this. Have a PWA, have a web publishing, because I think it depends on the type of application you're creating, but a lot of times we have seen the numbers and less people are downloading applications. People are not downloading as many apps. So there's got to be a great reason for people to download your application, or there's a clear use case for people to do that. So it depends if what industry you're in, if you're using this for your small business, your workers, employees, all those things. But I think a lot of times people tend to think, if I just put it on the App Store, people will find it. I'll have tens of thousands of downloads. It's inundated. So you have to really think about, there's a whole other launching strategy to think about how to, get featured and all those things with apps. But to get started, web publishing is a great option. Okay, let's talk about mobile deployment. And this is what a lot of people have questions on. Now, to do this, to deploy for the App Store and the Google Play Store, there are several different steps, and you have to have, this will take time. This will take time. So we're going to go through generalities, what you need to do, and then common pitfalls and what you need to do when you look at this documentation. So first of all, to even deploy to the App Store, Google and Apple, you need to go to developer.apple.com. You need to pay for a developer account, and you need to do the same for Android. Each one has an annual fee, I believe. Apple definitely has an annual fee, and so does Android, depending on when you're watching this. You can just Google how much it is. So if we Google Apple developer cost, right, per year. Okay, it's for developers, it's $99 per year at the moment. But again, check, do some research. You can just Google and then go from there. Google developer account is a one-time fee for $25. So much cheaper, but you've got to pay to play. Okay. So that's what it is. $99 for a year for Apple, $25 one time for Google at this time of the recording. Things could change though. Okay, so once you do that, what's important to note is you're going to have the App Store deployment documentation right here. And the thing is, they will walk you through what you need to do. When you're looking at the documentation, and the reason I'm not going to show you step-by-step here as well is the screens sometimes change, right? Things change based on, Apple developer, for Google. It's important to understand the key concepts of what you need to have done, what you need to prepare yourself, and then go from there, okay? So you need to have the App Store development documentation, but there's something to keep in mind. As you go through this documentation, if you want push notifications, and this is in a separate documentation in FlutterFlow, you have to follow this section here, adding an identifier, and you have to do this very specifically in the process, because if you do this wrong, you will get an error when you're trying to deploy, or even just, first of all, when you go through the process of getting your certificate to getting the steps even before you deploy, you will get an error if you don't have this, right? I'm trying to be very careful with the words I'm using, because as you go through this process, you'll see it. There were a lot of steps, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm not just generically saying certain words because it's very specific on each platform. But the point is, if you do not do this section with push notifications, you will get an error and you'll get frustrated and just not be able to complete this. Okay, so this process will take you through how you can deploy it to the App Store. After you deploy it to the App Store for Apple, there's another process when you're using it for the Google Play Store. It's important to keep this in mind because do not try to do this at the same time. Do one process, stop, take a breath, drink some water, take a nap, and then do the next one. Don't try to do Apple and try to do a Google Play Store at the same time. It will really mess you up. So it will go through the process of what you need to do. You will need to write down some information. So have a Google Doc or a Notion doc something where you're only going to have access to it, so you can write down some of this stuff that you'll need to write down, copy over, or download. Make sure you have it all in one place. Now, once you go through that, there are just a few things that I created this document just because there are a few things that I saw over and over again that were a lot of problems. Now, I've mentioned it a couple times throughout this, these videos, but one of the most common problems that I see is when people are copying over a template, they do not have a unique package name and project ID in Firebase, and that will cause, when you try to deploy the app, you will get an error. So you have to make sure that these are unique. And we've said it a couple times, when we have created new applications, you have to make them unique. You have to make them unique. If not, it is such a hassle to change things. So just do it at the beginning. This is another section where you need to have, when you go into Apple and you're trying to have a push notification, this is the exact screenshot of like where you need to add the bundle ID or what you need to add to it, which is the image notification, and then that will allow push notifications. That's huge, or you'll get an error when you try to deploy. Also, too, it's important, if you're getting certain errors, go and look in the FlutterFlow community. Sometimes what you're experiencing, just type in the error that you're getting, and a lot of people are experiencing the same thing, and they're really helpful to help you. So that's another thing as you go through this process. Again, as you're doing this, think about all the things that you're going to need to do step by step. And that's the process to deploy. Now, also too, before you deploy anything, it's also important to note that you're going to need to create certain images for the previews for your application. And you can do this as well. After your, you can actually have the pictures and have them already set based on the screenshots and everything. There'll be a link down below and we'll reference it, but you can render all of those screenshots, and it's really helpful. With the new version of FlutterFlow, they added that for you to just have that extra feature when you preview, to have all of that set up and just download it for your application. So that's really, really helpful when you're getting ready to submit this to the App Store. But again, what I would do is do mobile publishing first. Make sure it's exactly how you like it. Make sure that you're confirming a title, like the name of the app, all of those things, before you go into mobile development. You're seeing where some people do the MVP. They want to change the name. They want to do all these things. It's a hassle. Go through the process, test it with web publishing, then do mobile development from there. I'll see you in the next video.
That was a short clip from the complete FlutterFlow developer course inside the No Code MBA membership area. Now, to get full access to this course and many other no code tutorials, simply go to nocode.mba or click the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and share this video and subscribe for more tutorials like this.